Sign up to Council's disaster and weather event warning system. Receive alerts about emergency news, severe weather events and other public safety alerts via SMS or email. Registering to the disaster messaging system is free. To register, visit Gladstone Regional Council's Region Watch website and click on the Register for Warnings button. Get ready, Gladstone. Take the steps to protect what's most important to you. Let's be better prepared and protected for emergencies and disasters.
Well, good morning. The time being 9 a.m, I declare open the general meeting for the Gladstone Regional Council for the 16th of August 2022. Councillors, we have received an apology from Councillor Trevor. Can I have a mover that be accepted, please? Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Seconded, Councillor O'Grady. Put the motion. All in favour? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is messages of condolence. Councillors, do we have any messages of condolence? Thank you, Councillor O'Grady.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Message of condolence today goes to Bob Gemich. Bob was a really amazing artist that lived at Agnes Water. He passed away on the 19th of July and around friends. And it was just, he was a great prolific artist and writer, social observer, philosopher, free thinker, traveller, life music lover, chess, backgammon, pool player, conversationalist and true gentleman. Bob was known and loved around the country by all whose lives, hearts and souls that he touched. He was absolutely amazing. Wherever you went to, Bob was there. I went to Tamworth one year, he was there painting street art. It was just absolutely incredible. So there will be an art exhibition in his honour in the next few months, so which will be held at Agnes Water, so encourage everybody to go along. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Grady. Any further messages of condolence, councillors? No, I'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is prior notifications of conflicts of interest. Do we have any prior notifications, councillors? No, I have one. In item, I have a prescribed conflict of interest in agenda item G 4.2, expenditure approval for insurance services. As a report proposed to enter into a contract with local government mutual assets, LGM Assets. LGM Assets is a subsidiary of the Local Government Association of Queensland, which I'm a close associate as I'm a board member of the Policy Executive and a board member as well. And I'll leave the meeting for the consideration of this item and hand over to the Deputy Mayor. No further conflicts of interest to register. Thank you, councillors. The next item on the agenda before we move to our deputations is the Mayor's statement. And I want to thank the LGAQ and everyone who attended the inaugural Coastal Leaders Forum that was here in Gladstone just recently. We had councils represented from right across the state, obviously being coastal leaders and affecting all councils that are on the coast, and more than half of Queensland councils are on the coast. So fantastic to host the inaugural forum right here in Gladstone. Of course, we also had Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories, Christy McBain, Assistant Minister for Education, Regional Development, Senator Anthony Chisholm, and the Queensland Minister for Tourism, Innovation and Sport, Sterling Hinchliffe, here as well. So great to see both the state and federal government paying attention to Gladstone and Central Queensland as part of that forum. This weekend we have the Port to Park on Sunday the 21st, and if you haven't registered, time is running out, so make sure you get involved and get and register for that. I know a lot of councillors are volunteering on the day, and so are some staff as well, so thank you, Lisa, for your team. It's going to be a fantastic event, raising lots of funds for our local community and our local schools. And of course it's good for fitness as well. Thank you, Councillor Churchill. I'm sure you'll be doing the long run. The Calliope State School is celebrating 150 years on the 27th of August from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. There'll be market stalls, memorabilia, music and lots of fun and entertainment. So I'm sure that'll be exciting for old past students of Calliope State School and teachers and staff. It'll be fantastic to get back together. On Friday the 2nd of September from 10 to 2, we have our first Youth Summit. We're calling for all change makers from 15 to 25 to turn ideas into action and make that change in our local region. So you can register online via the GRC website. That's the 2nd of September, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And if there's no young ones watching online today, if parents and grandparents want to give them a bit of a nudge, it'd be very good to have as many involved as we can. We want to hear from our youth and the next generation for the Gladstone region. When I was elected to council in the year 2000, I was the youngest in Queensland. Certainly no longer the youngest anymore. Thank you, Councillor Goodluck and Muscat. But it's great to see younger ones coming up, and we want to certainly hear from our young generation at our Youth Summit. The Calliope River Village Festival this Saturday from 10 to 1 is the open mic. And then from 2 p.m, the locals get involved. We got Brad Miller's, Jacinta Bradley, Sand, thank you, Councillor Churchill, and Redthorn and many more. And then, of course, we have the headline acts, which is Amber Lawrence and Adam Harvey. So welcome back to Gladstone Region, Adam Harvey, who was here, of course, for our Baffle Creek bushfire recovery event and also the Moyne Valley Country Music Camp out the next day a few years back, and certainly entertained the crowds. And a couple more things on, of course, it's the Save the Date has gone out for the Santos GLNG Mayor's Charity Ball, which will be on the 27th of May next year. And finally, councillors, I thank you for supporting Vietnam Vets Day on Thursday. I know we will be attending the services around the region, so Gladstone region residents want to get out and support that event as well. Obviously, at our local cenotaphs, a number of local RSL sub-branches will be hosting a Vietnam's Vet Day function this Thursday. That's the Mayor's statement on current issues. Well, can I get a mover for the confirmation of the minutes, G2.1, for the 2nd of August 2022? Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. Seconded, Councillor Cameron. All in favour? That motion is carried. Now, we have a deputation from Sunshine Hydro, and I'll hand over to Wendy and Dan, who are going to do the presentation for Council. Of course, as you're aware, this is live stream right across a region and anyone who wants to watch online. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councillors, look, thank you for your time today. Most of you will be at least aware of the project, and I thought I'd just briefly give you a quick history. In November, we met with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor and some council officers and went through our early thinking about the project. In March, we had a formal public announcement with assistance of the Deputy Mayor, and recently we're at the stage of having full control of the land on which the project will sit. So we've now moved into our early engagement phase with the community. So we feel it's time now to present the project at its current stage and give you a little bit more detail about what it is, where it is, and those sort of things. Before I start, what I'd like to do is hand over to Wendy to describe her role and give you some idea of what the community consultation is going to be about, and then I'll go into the detail of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and councillors. As Dan said, I'm working on the communications and community engagement for the project. So over the next 2 days, we have 3 events lined up in Miriamvale. There's 2 community information sessions and an MOU signing event between Sunshine Hydro, Godarjal Development Indigenous Corporation, and BMRG. This is really the launch of the project. It's our first opportunity to talk to the community, so we'll be getting early feedback and using that to inform the communication and engagement moving forward. But we're excited to be able to start talking with the community and hearing what opportunities and also concerns they might have about the project.
Thank you. What we're proposing is the development of what's called a super hybrid. Now, I'll explain that in a minute. The project is a pumped hydro project to generate power. It also includes the development of hydrogen. So we're producing both hydrogen and electricity. The location, I think people probably aware that we're located near Miriamvale for the main pumped hydro. The diagram at the back is probably better. This is the main, I might find it. So, where are we? There are we. Let's go back. So this is near Miriamvale. Is that visible to everybody? In Miriamvale, we're proposing the hydrogen production, and we're currently in discussions with council for the construction of a pipeline for water between the Agnes Water desal plant and the site. Now that pipeline's intended to, brilliant. That pipeline's intended to supply water for the initial fill of the dam and also ongoing top-up. And it would involve upgrading of the DSL plant. Now we're at very, very early stages with council with that, but that's proceeding quite well. The individual components of the project, there is an upper dam, I think the numbers are there. Upper dam number 1 is on land that's owned by BMRG. We just recently signed an MRU for use of that land. The lower dam is across several properties, but it's just off Blackman's Gap Road.
Dan, just for those listening online in the gallery, BMRG, Burnett Mary Group.
Burnett Mary Regional Group.
Yeah.
Lower dam is off Blackman's Gap Road. Between the two, there's a tunnel, and there's a small access road. Tunnel is number 4. Number 3 is the access tunnel for people and equipment, and 5 is an access road off Forestry Road. The hydrogen production in Miriamvale is on a site adjacent to Council's existing depot, and there's not much we can say about that at this point in time other than it's hydrogen production. We're looking at various storage, be it liquefied hydrogen, methanol, or potentially ammonia. So we'll get to that with our studies. I should explain what a superhybrid is. I think that's probably essential, because people say this is just pumped hydro with hydrogen. If you want to find that. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So the general idea is that in a normal pumped hydro, water goes from the upper dam to the lower dam, produces electricity. Think the Snowy 2 that people are talking about. And then in another part of the cycle, the water's pumped back up to the top and starts the cycle again. The electricity is used, or part of the electricity is used to make hydrogen, and that hydrogen is stored in Miriamvale and then will be transported to various places, Gladstone or wherever. What makes it a super hybrid is that the pumped hydro and the hydrogen production communicate with each other via a piece of software that our founder, Chris Baker, has created over the last 7 years, which allows the two components to talk to each other, and it produces a very efficient process. So from the user's point of view, we're able to produce firm green energy. Now, most of you would probably be aware that solar has a big high peak in the day. A lot of that energy can't be used, and that's one of the things that's holding back the development of renewables, because you've got large peak where you can't use the energy. The idea of the pumped hydro is that it acts as a battery and is able to store that energy for later use. The ESOP software manages that process and rather cleverly allows a continuous, in this case 200 megawatts of 24/7 firm green energy, which allows you to begin to replace coal-fired power stations because you can provide that 24/7 power. So our super hybrid is quite special. This is unique. It's the first one in the world, and it's our endeavour is to be able to replace coal-fired power stations. Now, our partners I should talk about. BMRG is obviously a partner. We have recently partnered with Energy Estates, who some of you may be familiar with, in a joint venture for the Flavian project itself. Gaddarjul and BMRG. Now, as Wendy says, we've got an MOU signing ceremony on the land. I think some councillors are coming to that. As part of that, the Indigenous group have come up with a name, an Indigenous name for the project, which will be the official naming of that project on tomorrow. Timing for the project, I should talk about. The project's launched now this year. We're into the detailed planning process now. We're working with council. I think what's important for council is this: we're intending to take the approval process through council. We're not looking to do a state process. We've already engaged with your executive officer, Helen. She's delighted to see a process coming through the council. So we're working through with her. We have a planning pathway recently put together. So we're looking forward to working with council on that. Then once the approvals are through, we're hoping by 2025 we shall have financial close by then, and would move to construction, if all going well, from 2026 to 2028. I think that's all I need to say right now, so thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Councillors, officers, any questions? Councillor Grady.
Thank you for your presentation. Why did you choose Miriamvale? Just curious, that's all.
The part of this process is identifying good sites for the dams, upper and lower dam, and the location in Miriamvale was very good. The other one is having looked to need a water supply. It provides a good opportunity to work with the community, because if we do the pipeline, we're going to provide reliable water for Miriamvale, as well as water we need for hydrogen, but it would provide a growth stimulus for Miriamvale. So yeah, it's sort of a, I guess we have our internal mandate to put community first and First Nations first. So that's where we start. So we look to try and place it, if you can, near a community that can benefit.
Great, thank you for choosing Gladstone Region.
Yeah, here. Further councillor, Councillor Muscat, and then Councillor Branthwaite.
Hey, thank you. Looks very interesting. I just wanted to ask you if you had any idea on the approximate amount of people that will be involved in the construction and then operating.
Yeah, look, we do, thank you. We estimate around, well, with discussion, around 500 during the construction phase of several years, and permanent work between the hydro plant and the hydrogen production's 50 to 60.
Sorry, Councillor Branthwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just sort of thinking about the output from your power station. How many sort of megawatts are we looking at there? 600
megawatts.
600 megawatts. So it's not just for supplying power to make hydrogen, you're actually supplying the main grid.
It's a 600 megawatt power station, and there's a 300 megawatt electrolyzers to produce hydrogen. So I won't go into the detail of the software, but what it does mean is we can actually produce 900 megawatts to the grid of green energy.
Oh, wow.
So, and the supply of, we will only use solar and wind as our own supply.
Yeah.
So it's 100% green input.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to provide up to 900 megawatts total output, and 200 megawatts continuous 24/7.
Wow.
And on top of that, because of the nature of the software and the electrolyzers and how they interact, we're able to also provide frequency control services and other stabilising things that the grid need, and spinning inertia, which normally the coal turbines do.
Yeah.
So it provides not just power, but a whole lot of grid stabilising, grid load and that sort of thing.
Wow, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks very much, Wendy. Thanks, Dan. That's impressive and admirable. I've got two questions. Probably first and foremost is trying to understand at this stage, and perhaps if you can answer it, or if not, perhaps through CEO Helen Robinson, our Manager of Planning and Development, is this one development application, one project in the scope of works for the region, or is there a number of different development applications? And how does it apply to our current planning scheme in relation to new energies for the future?
It does fit in. RPS is our consultant on this. Looking at the pathway, we've got essentially 4 projects that will have DAs. One is the pumped hydro power station site. Second is the hydrogen. Third is the linear infrastructure of the water supply pipeline and the desal, and fourth will be the transmission line. They all require different approaches, of course. One's linear infrastructure, one's site-based, one's an industrial site. And there's a range of MCUs and operational works permits that are required in each. They're all different, some overlap. But across the board, we're already commencing broader things that we need, like community consultation, and we've just completed a desktop environmental study. So we're moving progressively towards that, and in a short time we'll present the full pathway to Helen. She's seen it already loosely. So yes, so there's multiple applications. And deliberately so, because they're very different in, we don't want a situation where the hydrogen perhaps, or the pumped hydro is held up because of some issue with the hydrogen industrial site. It's very different. They're all different approval processes.
So just a segue off that, and that's to be applauded that you're being on the front foot to undertake that community consultation. Do those development applications come before this council, or
yes, deliberately, yes.
Individually and or separately?
Individually and separately, they will come to the council, and that's what we're focusing on is it's a you're with us kind of project rather than going through a state referred project. Yes.
Yeah, terrific, thank you. And the next question, appropriately, when we talk about, we see in here in your presentation, your upper reservoir and your lower reservoir. And perhaps this might be getting down a little bit in the detail, but we understand when you develop these types of water storage areas, the Environmental Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act kicks in.
Yes.
And so I suppose I'd like to ask if there's an aspect of that from your perspective in relation to the project under the Act. That's the first thing. The second thing is that is these reservoirs on private property, or will there be an open storage area for our community to be able to access? I've probably got a bit of a selfish interest here because I like to see fish breeding that's done quite successfully in Lake Awunga and many other inland water storage areas. So,
yeah, thank you. They're talking about the water first. They're on private property. The intention is that those areas will be handed back to traditional owners to manage a lot of that thing in league with BMRG from a conservationist perspective. So, but the water itself, keep in mind that it's pumped hydro, so probably many times a day it'll empty almost and refill. So there's not a real opportunity for fish, simply because they probably wouldn't survive the changes between the two. And just for safety, because the water is constantly going up and down, for safety reasons, normally it's not public access.
okay, thank you for that. I'm sure there'll be others who will ask questions. We need to talk about the pipeline.
Yeah, so it's off Forestry Road. Many of you will be familiar with the National Park. So we actually had a dam that was in the valley where the National Park is. We've shifted that now to be completely away from any influence on Coliseum Creek or the National Park. So it's essentially on the corner with Blackman's Gap Road and Forestry Road.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Dan and Wendy. I understand from previous discussions there was a lot of work done around the hydrology of the area. That was one of the reasons that you chose this specific site. Just hypothetically, you know, we get all the approvals, it's all go ahead, we've got the pipeline. How long do you expect it might take to fill the dams from the water source through the desal plant? Would that be a process that would take months, or would it be?
It's years.
Years.
It's an interesting question because one of the things, of course, we're going with your asset people is what are the limits and expectations of upgrading of the plant, obviously for Agnes Water and potentially for our use in Miriam Vale. So that's determining, you know, whatever that ends up will determine the fill time. So it'll be anything from 18 months to 2.5 years.
Okay, yeah.
So separately to any catchment infill, of course.
Yeah.
If we have a wet season, the modelling shows that with wet seasons we may not even need the desal plant for up to years.
And I'm guessing there'd be a large portion of evaporation with a large body of water like that, so that's what the desal would be to
keep the top, and all dams, of course, leak slowly, very slowly, seepage through the bottom. Yeah. But we will be putting evaporation controls on the surface. It's good to do so.
Yeah. No, interesting, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Just a question on, is it just a hydrogen storage facility you're proposing for Miriam Vale itself?
Well, it's the actual hydrogen production storage will be there, but then it's 50, the volume of hydrogen will be distributed to wherever, to others. Yeah.
Thank you. Just, I wanted to explain that a little bit more, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, that'll come through a planning application at some point, obviously, but your site you're saying is near, the production is near our depot?
Yes, to the, it's the properties immediately to the north of your depot.
And that would probably already be zoned light industrial or something?
I think it is, yeah. It's beside between the railway and
Councillor
depot.
Cameron first. Yeah, Councillor Cameron, then back to Councillor Goodluck.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. Really interesting project. Just on the, considering your dam is full now, what effect would weather events, extreme weather events, have on your production and the running of the place?
Yeah, that's all comes as part of the approval process, not just through council, but through the ANCOLD safety assessment for the dams. So we have requirements in Queensland that sufficient freeboard is available for worst case scenarios, and that's all modelled to make sure that that can happen.
So we're not going to flood me around,
No. And we have to do quite detailed studies for things like even dam failure and what would happen downstream and all that sort of thing. So quite a lot of work to go between now and then.
Councillor Goodlett.
Thanks, and so it's a 900 megawatt potential output,
Yes.
which is really great. I understand the Gladstone power station, for example, I think it's 1600 megawatt, and then you said there's 200 megawatts of firming capacity. So does the Gladstone power station have 1600 megawatts firming capacity, or is it?
It runs at about half.
Half, yeah.
Half, yeah, so it's about 800 now.
So the 200 firming would be quite beneficial to the grid. Is that?
Absolutely, and for somebody looking to get off coal, so to speak, because quite a few large industries are looking to run on green power, it provides a reliable supply, which just the solar or wind by itself doesn't do.
And is there a reason you can't have the sort of 900 megawatts of the firming power, or is that just down to?
It's just the reality of how the systems work. I mean, it's no pumped hydro in the world at the moment provides firm energy, green or otherwise. It's through the use of the electrolyzers and the
Software.
The ESOP software that allows you to manage that process to get, we say 200, it might be 250, but it allows you to get that continuous energy which otherwise you can't achieve.
That's right. And is that because you can pump that excess green energy through the day, for example, with the solar into the hydrogen production process? Is that?
Yeah, essentially in simple terms, what happens is you're throttling back in order to maintain out to the grid constant load. You're throttling back some of your electrolyser production at the time you need it to keep the 200 up in there. So it's kind of throttling backwards and forwards between hydrogen production and pumping for storage.
And my last question, I guess, is there expansion potential for this particular project, or once this project is complete, if assuming it's successful, that would be it?
We're already looking at 2, potentially 3 other projects to the north, still within Gladstone region, which are just starting to firm up in regards to land. Essentially, we're doing behind-the-scenes technical assessments, but we don't tend to move on a project, and I certainly don't get the ticket to go and do it until we've got a surety over the land. So once that happens, but the total, were they to come into existence, is something like 4 gigawatts between the 3. So it's quite substantial.
Fantastic. Thank you.
This is obviously it's nice to compare with other power stations and power supplies, but by no stretch of the imagination is it this project that will replace the Gladstone power station, because already our power station ramps up and ramps down very quickly. So in terms of the renewable energy market that's coming, there's probably no better power station in the country than the Gladstone power station in terms of being able to meet market demands and peak times and ramp down when not required. But it's a great project that I'm sure the community will get behind. Obviously, you've got to go through a planning process and hopefully tick all the boxes there, and it can actually create this economic development that Miriamvale would so greatly appreciate. But in terms of energy use, we're going to need more energy, not yet less, with companies like Fortescue Future Industries manufacturing their facility in our state development area. So this is just going to add to the mix, I think, if it gets approved. Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate the opportunity for us all to ask questions at this stage. I'd just like to go and talk about the desalination plant, but don't want to go in depth to it. But appropriately, what would your project demands require for that desalination plant? and to what degree? Do you know at this early stage? And further to that is that whatever it may be with relevance to that desalination plant and the pipeline, will that be again controlled under the Environmental Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act, EPBC as we know it, as such?
Look, yes, it will. I mean, everything we're proposing comes under the normal Environmental Protection Acts. Probably the desal side more so because of the Great Barrier Reef influence. The size of the plant, I mean, in raw figures, your plant is currently operating at about 1.5 megalitres a day. I think its current licence is about 2.5, roughly. I think the full approval's out to 10. We don't want to disturb that approval, so we'd be looking at between 4 and 6 maximum megalitres a day, and that's not every day. It's just broad numbers. But that will be fine-tuned as we get into early technical design.
Goes back to that raising and lowering.
Yeah, and assessments of how much the actual catchment of the lower dam will contribute.
Yeah, and the weather, as Councillor Goodluck made reference to, you know, hopefully Mother Nature could be kind to you at some stage as well.
Yeah, look, it genuinely depends on whether the dams are completed during what is a longer wet season than, you know, if we're in our current regime of La Nina and the things that are happening now, then we'd probably fill it first from the natural catchment.
Then my next question appropriately would be the subset from that, and perhaps it's to our, through our CEO to our General Manager of Carly Quinn, or our Economic Development Specialist, relevant to formulate, and we've had other projects like this in recent times, developing an infrastructure agreement, developing and or negotiating and agreeing to an infrastructure agreement. Will that be part of the course?
Yeah, look, it's not legal for people other than councils to own water assets in Queensland. So the intent is that Sunshine Hydro would pay for any upgrade costs of the desal plant. We would pay to build the pipeline and all its connections, and then we would hand that over to council as an asset to be managed by council. So.
Thank you for that, Dan. Could I just get a comment, would you mind, Mayor Matt, from our CEO, just to, so I can understand what that process will be?
And if Lisa can't answer, we've got GMs in there. So.
My response would be, Councillor Churchill, it's probably too early to be talking about those sorts of arrangements. There's a lot of planning steps to go through, so appreciate the interest, and we can keep councillors informed as we go, but I'd probably prefer to wait until we have some more firm information to be able to give you some confidence. But the concept of infrastructure required for a project not impacting on councils' ratepayers would be the principle we'd be looking to adopt, and the mechanisms will be developed through negotiation, I would propose.
Thank you, Madam CEO. I'm comforted by that. Thank you.
I assume that if we own a pipeline, we would be selling the water to the proponents at a price that doesn't affect our ratepayers. I'm sure you'd accept that.
Well, I think that's the early discussions along those lines.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously any increase to the size of a desalination plant also helps the future growth of Agnes Water as well. Councillor O'Grady, did you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. You spoke about community consultation. I've just had a look on your Facebook page and I can't see anything about the community consultation. So have you set dates?
We do. So this newsletter went out to every house or every post office box in Miriamvale. It has the dates. It's on our website. So there is a Flavian specific website, and it hasn't been posted on the Sunshine Hydro Facebook.
Right, okay. So will you be doing that?
It's too late at this stage for a Facebook notice, given that the session is tonight.
Right,
But
okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's posters up around town as well in Miriamvale.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
People in Miriamvale are aware? I'd hope so.
We certainly intend to use Facebook more moving forward, but for this first one, we've relied on traditional mail. Yeah.
Excellent. Councillors, any further questions? Lisa, any questions from officers? Officers? No? Well, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Wendy. We look forward to seeing more as it comes through. Thank you. Yeah, we have a... Yeah, thank you. Can I get a move that the deputation be received, please? Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Seconded, Councillor Braithwaite. All in favour? Cheers, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda, councillors, is the officers' reports. And G4.1, the first officers' report is the 2021-2022 operational plan Quarterfall report, and I hand over to the General Manager of Strategy and Transformation, Carly Quinn. Thank you, Carly.
Thank you. That's working, isn't it? Yeah. Good morning. So today is the Quarterfall report of the 21-22 operational plan, which brings to a close our first year of activity against our corporate plan 21-26. Of the 14 initiatives that we had identified to undertake in the year, 10 of them have been completed. The other 4 all have plans in place to be completed over the next 3 months. We have an average of 93% completion rate of all items across the operational plan. Through delivering work internally and creating efficiencies across all of the projects, the business has seen a savings of just over $500,000 throughout the year on our operational plan budget, which means we have been able to achieve the items for less than we anticipated. And we've had a real focus on our council's vision of connect, innovate and diversify. And in this quarter's report, you'll see a lot of stories that talk to the connect, innovate and diversify. There's some normal infographic highlights that we all like to see in the quarterly report are in there. I'll also probably just share a couple of annual ones, which you won't see in the quarterly report, but you will see in the annual report coming up. We've had 123,000 customer solutions interactions, over 1,000 potholes repaired, 778 road signs replaced, 4,500 trees planted, and over $30 million in external funding secured. Are some of the annual highlights that are an aggregate of the 4 quarterly reports. And we'll be sharing it online on socials and on our website today as per usual after it's endorsed. Any questions?
Thanks, Carly. Questions, councillors? Councillor Hanson, then Churchill.
I've got a couple, Mr Mayor, but I'm trying to get them in order, but page 7 of 25, the performance plans, as you said, they're progressing, and I see on page 24 or 29 in the report that is happening. I'd like the wording to be should provide ongoing value for our people. At the last sentence, it should be, for my reckoning, ongoing value for the organisation, the ratepayer and our people, because the performance management, performance plans affect the organisation and affect the way we produce and affect the way we perform for the ratepayer as well. Page 8 of 25, better go to that now. The waste one, I'm just a little bit disappointed with the progress we've made since we did the waste management plan. I think, how long ago was that?
2019.
2019.
So,
and we're still lagging behind in education, which is one of the most important things that we should be doing. And I know that we're doing CQ Rock Regional Waste Management and Infrastructure Plan, but there's things we can do here for recycling quicker, I think, recycling and for waste education that we should be doing ASAP, not waiting until next year, as the report says. Just a comment. Mm-hmm. The trends on page 9 of 25, we seem to be getting percentages, completion percentages. We started in 2017, 87%. We've never ever got to anywhere near 90% or 100%. Are we overestimating always the amount that we can do in a year? We're getting, it says we're getting better in the last little bit. I know COVID's in there somewhere, but 2018, 19, COVID wasn't anywhere to be seen, and it was only 46%. So yeah. I'm just looking at our future thinking as to what we can manage and what we can perform to in a year, rather than seeing all the time a performance that isn't up to what I think my standards are. I had a few, sorry.
Did you want me to respond to that one?
You can respond to them. that now if you want.
I'll take the first ones as comments. I think
Okay.
you'd mentioned that, but
Yeah.
happy to answer any. But in relation to that one, it's absolutely a strong consideration for us each year in making sure that we are really honing and refining our focus for the year and making sure that we are committing to things that are achievable. We're making sure that they're the priorities of the business and that they're achievable. We have gone over the past 4 years from around about 126 items in the operational plan down to the 14 last year and the 8 this year. They are quite complex pieces, so it's not like they're just 8 simple things, but they are 8 key priorities this year and 14 priorities last year. We were, and probably sound a little loose, but we were absolutely tracking quite well, but COVID definitely, the wave of COVID earlier this year has delayed some items. But also at the same time, we're getting better and better at how we deliver our projects and the engagement that happens across the business. So sometimes that is taking us a little longer than we probably anticipated. But we're also maturing our approach each year and ensuring that, for example, this year when we've built our operational plan items, we've taken the lessons learned from last year in project management and working them out through the timeframes. So I think we are very conscious about not overcommitting, and I think we're probably picking the right amount of activity. Some of these pieces are quite complex and do have some external factors that sometimes delay them. But even the 4 that haven't been achieved this year are definitely still on track, and they have very relevant reasons why they're just taking that little bit longer than 12 months to achieve, but they will be achieved very soon and will be achieved to their full extent.
I look forward to next year's report.
Yeah.
I've just got a couple other, on page 10 of 25. Could you just explain the $500,000 that saving that we achieved? Was that of the 73% achieved, or was that of
So
the
that-
100% that we
Yeah.
should have achieved?
Yeah.
Or we could have achieved, not should have achieved, could have achieved.
So it is savings on the entire budget, and that takes into account any of the 4 projects that are still carried over into this year. That accounts for any of the money that will still be spent in the first quarter of this year to finish off those projects. It is still a $500,000 savings across the entire work plan. Was that the question?
Yep.
Yep. Yes. It doesn't mean that we're going to spend that
That's right.
$500,000 this year and it's not a true savings. It is a true savings over the entire project. Yeah.
And just bearing with me, I just have one other point, but I think I might bring this up at a councillor get-together later on, but talking about why the community is not that interested in reading these reports. May we have a conversation later with the CEO regarding that and my thoughts on why that's happening?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. I'd love to know too why, if you think people aren't reading them, but I don't know why don't answer that now. I'm happy to have that.
Well, most of the report, as far as I'm concerned, is about the organisation, not about the community. There's a little bit about the community. There are some areas about the community, but the report's focusing on how the organisation is running, and sometimes the interest isn't out there for all the dots and ticks to be made in a report. It's just how it affects the individual outside. And I guess that's probably why people aren't taking as much notice of it as we probably like. That's just my point.
It obviously is the report on what's been achieved by the department, but if it can be more community focused, why not? Is that something possible, Carly?
Maybe we've got to do that to try and create the interest in people reading these reports outside. You're working for council for a long time. You've worked for council for a long time, so it is a great read. I think it is too.
Yeah.
Over time, we've certainly been trying to move more towards telling stories of the work that we're doing and what that means for the community and how that's having a positive effect on the community, or being transparent about something if it didn't work how we expected it to. And the team are also doing a lot of work in the social media space. We have videos that attach to these reports, and we have social media tiles that are going to be shared. I think there's a series of 12 tiles that go with this report that will be shared over the next 2 weeks to create interest in the report. But very happy to potentially have a session with council that talks about any future ideas you might have on how we can make it a more community-focused document.
Okay, Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks for that. I found the report very impressive and very good in reading, so hopefully those that are listening in and watching in with Councillor Hanson's encouragement will take the opportunity to read them. On page 7, in the first paragraph, you spoke about the residential water security, and I'll just take an extract from it. Miriam Vale was found to have insufficient supply of water for the future, and alternative sources have been explored and recommended. My question becomes pertinent now when we've just had that presentation from Sunshine Hydro, and it's not going to be a quick fix, and they've got to go through a whole lot of development applications and hoops and hurdles, etc., etc. But does that become part of the mix for long-term vision for water supply if there's a talk of a pipeline? And appropriately, the opportunity as a community service obligation and or water by access for that community and anyone along that corridor?
Yeah, so the team that handled that water security project are the same team that will engage with Sunshine Hydro on their opportunities, so that will certainly become part of the future strategic approach and any of those opportunities that become apparent in any of the new industry as we emerge.
Lovely, thank you. I'm pleased to hear that. On the same page, and I'm not going to be backwards in coming forwards on this one, is your transport strategy. And I would like to ask the question where it talks about effectively support our region's growth and productivity, series of short-term, medium and long-term actions to prioritise and manage the region's road network. I would like to ask the question in relation to whose responsibility is it to ensure that when we talk about Hanson Road as a heavy freight corridor, whose responsibility, what tier of government, to go and ensure that there is comprehensive community consultation with the Hanson Road traders and those that are associated along that particular corridor, and anybody else that may be interested in understanding what could or is planned or may come to fruition in the future for Hanson Road?
In relation to the work that the state might propose, yeah, so if it's the work that the state would propose, then it's absolutely the state's responsibility. I think in general, though, we always have a responsibility to ensure that if there is information that we can share with our community, that we would share that, but with the engagement and the active communication would have to come from the state and for the communities back through the state.
So Queensland Government, Department of Transport and Main Roads,
yes,
to undertake that comprehensive community consultation when they have a plan?
I believe that would be our expectation of them. We can't tell them what to do, but that should be our expectation.
It is a state road.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm well aware of that. But the reality of it is that this council may also get caught up in the whirlpool. So I think that needs to be clearly articulated. It's a state road, and the Queensland Government Department of Transport and Main Roads will ensure that they undertake comprehensive community consultation with the Hanson Road traders and those that use that corridor. Thank you.
If you're talking, seeing you've raised it, seeing you're talking Hanson Road, you might be talking port access roads. So our council is on the record repeatedly of supporting a port access road designated along the rail corridor. Unless anyone around the room has changed their position on that, I think that was a unanimous decision of council. And certainly when I sat where Councillor O'Grady was in about 2002 and voted for the port access road, it was always stage 1 and always meant to continue on further. It's good enough for other cities around Queensland to have a designated port access road. It's good enough for the Gladstone region, but I haven't heard any more on that lately, Councillor.
No, it's been very quiet, Mayor Matt, and that's probably appropriate that I raise it here as part of the transport strategy, ensuring this council doesn't get caught up in any backwash or whirlpool, because our position was clearly articulated and nothing should change.
No changes here. Any further questions for Carly? No? No, it's easy. Can I get a mover for the report? Oh, do you want to amend it, Councillor Hanson? Did you? Did you want to do an amendment, I believe, was it? No?
No, I don't want to do an amendment. I just want to be able to discuss a few issues.
Yeah.
And I think the CEO's taken notes on that. Thank
Excellent.
you.
All right.
Thank you, CEO.
Happy to move, Mayor Matt.
Move Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor O'Grady. With the motion, all in favour? Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is G4.2, Expenditure Approval Insurance Services, and I will hand over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number G/4.2, expenditure approval, insurance services.
Excuse me, Deputy, the Mayor hasn't left yet.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. I was just going to hand
He's
over
just left now, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Much appreciated. I hand over to the General Manager for Finance, Governance and Risk, Mark Holmes.
Morning, Deputy Mayor. Morning, councillors. This item is essentially seeking council's endorsement of entering into our expenditure for insurance services with local government mutual services, who provide a range of insurances as outlined there. The reason for it coming forward is the total expenditure is over the $500,000 delegation that we have for the CEO in this space.
Councillor Grady.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Mark, just a question, just reading through here. Marine hull, can you explain that to me? What are we insuring marine hull?
We do have a couple boats that we insure, so it's for damage to those vessels.
Right, okay, thank you.
Councillor Hanson.
Just the point at the end of just before the summary, the expenditure of 516,000 odd is contained within the budget for 22-23. From July to August, are we insured? Like from the previous?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It just sounds like that if you're reading that, it sounds like you're not insured for the first 2 months.
No, we're covered from 1 July.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks for that, Khan. 2 questions. First one is public liability. So public liability fits in amongst all of this, does it, Mark?
Yes.
Thank you. Just so when we talk about personal accident insurance, just making sure that there is a separation between personal accident and public liability, but thank you for that. And I don't think this is a fun fact, but I'm just trying to get an understanding. What did we pay last year for insurance services? Do we know? And the reason for my question was because we had a presentation at the Coastal Leaders Summit in relation to the future of insurances and where insurance is going to go. And it was, anyway, that's not for discussion now, but it was quite impressive presentation in trying to understand what the future will be with insurance, especially more so in relation to major disasters and impact on local governments and capacity to pay, and the list goes on. But and I sat with Madam CEO, and I'm sure that we'll hear more about that in the future. But my question was, what did we pay last year?
Councillor Churchill, I will have to take that question on notice, but there has been a slight increase. It's not significant, but it has definitely increased, but I'm happy to provide those details.
Yeah, when I get a slight increase in my pocket money from my wife, I normally like to know how much it's going to be. So what do you call a slight increase? Is it a percentage? We don't know.
I can't give you the exact amount.
Okay.
But we do work quite hard with our insurers and do a lot of work to manage our risk profile. We've recently done a series of asset inspections and things like that to really minimise any increase to our premiums.
Okay. Any chance I could find out before the end of the meeting or after the meeting?
Yeah, I can go and find
Lovely.
that information out for you.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Councillor Churchill. And Mark, from my understanding, LGM is a members' benefit scheme whereby the profits after a certain amount of time are returned to members, being that it is a subsidiary of the local government association. So we actually get returns from LGM through this process of being a member. And
this is the net amount that we're seeking the approval of.
Yeah. So just for reference, though, that by being a member of this scheme for our insurance at a point in time down the track, when I think it's every 5 years or however often it is it?
Yeah, you actually normally see a premium rebate every year.
Every year?
Yeah, and you receive that on all our different classes of insurance. So this particular paper doesn't seek it for public liability, but we get it off our public liability, and we get it off all of our assets and other insurance services as well. Yeah, I think it totals around about 150,000 this year was the rebate.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, councillors? Can I get a mover for the recommendation? Move Councillor Branthwaite for the recommendation. Yep. Seconded Councillor Hanson. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Declare it carried. Thank you. If we can invite Mayor Matt back to the table.
Very easy. Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. Move to the next item on the agenda, which is G4.3, the monthly financial report for the period ending the 31st of July 2022. And I hand over to the General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk, Mark Holmes. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillors. This item is for your review of the monthly financial statements for the period ending 31 July 22. So, as you'll note, the new financial year is in its infancy, so essentially a lot of our pro rata figures will be there quite low. So, we have generated our rates levy for the year, but what we are doing is a slight change to process, is essentially recognising that rates revenue each and every month and trying to make sure that therefore we're matching our revenues and expenses through this process. So you'll see that come through, so that whilst we can control that for our rates revenue, we can't do that for some of our other income that is quite lumpy in nature. Yeah, so our assistance grants that come through, our incomes and tax equivalents and the like that do come through in essentially big hits, we haven't done that. We aren't able to do that. But hence we do have a small deficit at the moment running through our books, but our expenditure remains in line with budget at this point. Certainly our capital spend is probably behind where we would hope for the month, so only at 2.2 million at this point, so at 4.3% of budget. But it'll be one of those things that matures as we progress through the financial year. Our essentially our outstanding rates, that's again probably certainly what I'd say is probably a record low for us at the moment. We're down to 2.9% in that space, so that's a big achievement. So we'll only report on that through till September, and then we will then recalibrate that for the following financial year as we work through that rate levy process. But happy to take questions.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Questions, councillors? Lisa? Sorry?
So, just make a comment, please, Mr Mayor, if I may. I just received correspondence just yesterday in relation to financial assistance grants, and contrary to the advice we had received previously, we're actually receiving an increase on last year's payment of 5%. So that's good news. That will help us with our very small surplus that we have. So, yeah, that was surprising news, but gratefully received.
Sorry, CEO, is that a 5% increase moving forward consecutive years, or is that just a 5% chew into next year's funding, if you know what I mean? Well,
yes, the letter was saying it was a 5% increase on our 21-22 allocation. It did refer back to the previous correspondence, which outlined a decrease over time. My understanding from the letter is there is an increase to the total pool for financial assistance grants for Queensland, so that's why we're receiving an increased amount this year, but that the trajectory of reduction over the next few years is still what's being referred to. So, yeah, so a one-year windfall, I suppose, yeah. Happy to circulate that correspondence to councillors if you'd like to see the details.
And that's obviously for those watching online based on a States Grants Commission review. The increase of financial assistance grants by the new federal government means we'll get an increase this year, but the review from the Grants Commission, Queensland Grants Commission, will see us have a reduction. Not a massive reduction, unfortunately for us, unfortunately for Rockhampton and Fraser Coast and Bundaberg and some of our friends that have moved to a minimum grant. We won't lose as much as they will, but it is good news for some other councils. Obviously, there's some winners and some losers, and I know our friends in Warrabinda and Banana Shire will certainly appreciate an increase. What we've always argued is that there should be an increase to the pool, not a debate around how it's distributed, because absolutely the smaller councils need an increase in funding. We know that for sure. We also know that our council and other councils that have lost money, so especially ones that have lost significant funding, have to find that from somewhere else, and that's what it should have been, is an increase in the distribution and no one went backwards rather than worrying the council's going backwards. Unfortunately, that's not what happened with the Grants Commission review. And so now we'll have to wait and see what that means for us next year. But it is good to see an increase this year. Beg your pardon, sorry?
They cut the cake up the wrong way.
Yeah. Anyway, increase the pie rather than mess with the methodology. Unfortunately, that's what's happened. Any further questions to Mark? No. Can I get a mover for the officer's recommendation, please? Move Councillor Cameron, seconded Councillor Hanson. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mark. Now, the next item on the agenda is council reports. Councillor Churchill, you're attending an event on the weekend. What you might like to discuss?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Mayor Matt. No, just briefly, you mentioned it earlier, which is the Calliope River Historical Music Festival. So it'll be a great day for local talent, and Adam Harvey and Amber Lawrence coming along. And I think appropriately, if you haven't got your tickets, you can book tickets online, but at the same time you can get tickets at the gate. And I think we've got dinosaurs coming, so it's I don't think they're real dinosaurs, but anyway, I could be a bit of a dinosaur, but it'd be a great opportunity for. And I think the final comment was it's pleasing that the Gladstone Regional Council, through our Regional Arts Development Fund and as Chair of RADIF with the Queensland Government, have been able to contribute some funding support for that particular project. So, yeah, if you haven't seen me play drums before, please come along. And if you don't want to see me, well, don't come. But I think it'll be a great day and a great night of entertainment. And I'd probably go so far as to say Adam Harvey spends a fair bit of time in the Gladstone region.
Yeah.
We should encourage him to perhaps buy a house or invest in the region so he can locate himself here as well with Amber Lawrence. But anyway, thanks for that, Mayor Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Any further council reports? No, I did mention in the Mayor's statement last council meeting that, of course, it's a multicultural festival is on the 27th as well. So I did mention that this morning, but certainly have mentioned it previously, and make sure you get down to that at the Tondoon Botanic Gardens. No further council reports. There's no urgent business. There's no notice of motion and no confidential items that I'm aware of. Thank you, and I'll declare the meeting closed at 2 minutes past 10 a.m. Thank you.